Doing a video explaining how far off from the chest press you want that bar to be as far as where the tension starts. Because what happens to most people that are starting, especially if they come from a weightlifting background, they want to try to replicate a bench press, which is not what we're trying to do with the X3 chest press. In reality, the X3 chest press is more like if it was a floor press, not a bench press. That is the issue where most people have, especially if they come from weightlifting or powerlifting or whatever, that they say, well, but this doesn't feel like a bench press. We're not trying to do a bench press. First of all, a bench press has many different cons against it, because a bench press, on most people, eventually it ends up hurting their shoulders. Yeah, even if with good form, it ends up hurting the shoulders, because obviously that closer the bar is to your chest, now it's forcing more, you're having to keep your hands way more outside, especially at the level that most people bring a bar on a bench press, as opposed to a close grip press where it's down here. So if you're benching, let's say here's the bench, this is a wider bar, I would still need even slightly bit wider if I was actually just doing a bench press. When you're benching, the reason you're, and let's say you bring the bar touching your chest right here. Now you're supposed to keep your back tight, your shoulders, your back pinned against the bench, and also down. You're not shrugging up. You're here. Notice, because of the width of the bar comes up here higher, because you're able to physically place your hands here wider. If you're using a narrow bar like we do with the X3, if you're here, you can't be here. You're gonna force yourself up here. So stop trying to bring the bar here. You cannot. That's not where the bar is gonna end up being. Plus, because what'll happen is look what's gonna happen to your shoulders. It's gonna round upward and out of position, because it's very hard to keep your back pinned and have this and your elbows flared out here. First of all, look where your elbows are here, and you would literally be torquing your wrists like this. You're torquing your wrist, it hurts. So you're trying to be in a bench press position rather than the way you would actually do a chest press with the X3. There's a difference. It's a different movement. So stop trying to replicate it. Another issue is, if you're here, and obviously with the bench press, you're able to keep the elbows behind you because you're on a bench. You're able to do that also with chest press. But the problem with the bar being close to your chest is that this always torques the shoulders. That's why people that bench press heavy eventually end up, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you end up with hurt shoulders. All right? We're not trying to replicate a chest press. You're trying to a bench press. You're actually trying to replicate a push press off the floor. Now look where, if you're off the floor, look where the bar is. Now, again, you could do this against the wall to actually test it out, but you don't need this bar to have the tension here. So stop trying to get shorter bands or shortening to have tension here. You don't want tension here. Because tension here, let's say you're a really big guy, I will get extenders. You still want the band's tension to start around, depending on who you are, around 1.5 inches to 2 to 3 inches off the chest. Just like a push press would. Just like if you had dumbbells here and your bench and you were pushing off the floor. Push press still gets you strong, but it's a lot safer than a bench press because exactly you're not bringing that bar, your elbows behind you, where it could force you to rotate your shoulders forward. So you don't need, we're not bench pressing. We're not doing a competition in powerlifting where there's a rule where you have to touch your chest. And you don't need it to get strong or to get big mass of chest. If you have a big mass of chest, you're gonna develop it anyways, all right? So you don't need it. Now, another thing is, don't try to flare your elbows so far out to bring this bar up here. Because look at the angle here that you're torquing. A lot of you say, my wrist hurt. Yeah, your wrist hurt because you are flaring too much, too wide. The natural angle of a push press, especially if you're doing close grip push press, you're here. You're down here in the elbows should be slightly bit out. You don't have to bring them completely in. If you bring them completely in, again, now you're rotating forward your shoulders. They have to be flared out like 30%, like at a 30-degree angle outward. And from here, notice where it's starting. It's gonna start different on everyone. Why? Because everyone has a different proportion length here and here to someone else. So on some, it might start here. On some, it might start here. It depends on how your proportions are, where your elbow is maybe at a 30 right under that bar. You don't want to be like this because now this is torquing your wrist, a lot of pain. So anyone feeling a lot of pain is because your elbows are not behind the bar, under the bar. You're trying to flare them out too much and moving this bar too high. You want to be here. Now, obviously, this is standing up, right? And then just push out. Now, obviously, what I mean by tension starting here, you already want the band to have tension wherever this is at on your body. Wherever this distance is at on your body, there should be tension here, right? So obviously, you don't want the tension to start here. You want the tension to already be here. So ideally, probably the tension starts here a little bit, and by the time you really set yourself up, you're here. Here, there should be tension on the band, on whatever band you're using. And you should be able to push, come back, push, and what happens is when you're here, there should be tension. Obviously, that means that the tension should start like right here, and then you push out. Because you don't want a lot of tension here. You want to be able to have lighter tension here that you can handle and pushing to extreme tension here. So that's all you're trying to do is that, and squeeze and hold, squeeze and hold. You're not trying to do a bench press. Stop trying to do a bench press. That's not what the X3 is for. The bands do not need the range that a bench press does, that a squat does, that you don't need any of that. You need to be able to overload the far range into really, really heavy. So if you use a really heavy band and you're stuck here, you're actually limiting yourself. Because what you want is a band that gets really strong out here, gets light here. Really strong out here, gets light here. If that means that if you're a narrower person, then you might need the 32-inch band. If you're a woman, most likely, a lot of women will need a 32-inch band. But don't use a 32-inch band if it's to get it stuck here. If it's stuck here, that band, you're only going to end up doing damage to yourself. Because eventually, if the band is heavy enough, you're having to force out at angles that are not good for you. Yeah, you're able to force it, but you're only hurting yourself. Why are you doing, there's no need to do that damage to you. When you could from here, as long as there's tension here, this is all the range you need. You don't need any more range. You don't need anything here. You don't need to be stuck here. So if you're a big person, like most big guys, and actually, let's say to get into any band, you're stuck here, I will put an extender on the band so that you start tension around here. You want the tension on the band to start like 1.5 inches to 2 inches away, and then you push a little bit, and from there, you never come back to where you're losing the tension. You stay under control. But you don't want to be forcing your way into pushing tension out here, from here. Because that's not what we're trying to do here. You're not trying to do a bench press. And you don't need to do a bench press. A bench press only could lead to eventually, if you do it as heavy from here, you're gonna limit the heavy that you get out here. And the more heavy you're able to get out here, the better it is for you. But the less heavy you're out here, the safer it is for you. So there's no need ever to be stuck right here in the chest. You don't want that. You don't want to get shorter bands to be stuck back here. Now, if you're still working out to be a power lifter because you want to lift and compete in a bench press, that's a different scenario. That's not what we're talking about here. That's not 95% of people. They don't need in any way, shape, or form to replicate a bench press. You don't ever need it. It doesn't happen, right? It's not a necessary thing. If you're a power lifter, then yeah, and you want to have strength off of the weak range right here where you have to touch, then you could use bands to train for that. But you know the risk you're taking. That's a different issue. That's relevant. But that doesn't apply to 95% of you. You're never gonna go powerlift, so there's no need to be pushing yourself back here.